Okay, first we look at personal interviews. So in home, personal interviews provide very high quality information, just like that guy asking that couple questions. But they are very expensive because the interviewer must travel, and it costs a lot to hire an interviewer to do interviews. This type of research is not conducted as much today as it was in the past. Okay, so the advantages of personal interviews are that respondent interviewed at home in a natural setting where consumption decisions are made. So it's usually where they consume their products and use their products. So it's in a good environment to ask them questions about products and services. The interviewer can also show them various things that they need to taste or use or test, like that's a Kirby vacuum cleaner example. An interviewer can also probe, right? So in other words, if the people are not sure, the interviewer can ask them other questions or give them more information. Okay, then we have shopping mall intercept interviews. This is conducted in the common areas in shopping malls, and it's a cheaper version of a personal form of interview, cheaper than the door-to-door interview. Why? Because the person doesn't have to travel to every person's house. They only travel once. They travel to the mall, and then they engage different people in the mall. So it costs less. However, the disadvantage is that you might not get the type of people that you need to interview. They might not just be at the mall that day. Let's say you want to interview, young mothers. But for whatever reason on that day there aren't many young mothers. So then what do? So that's the one disadvantage. Also, the interviews must be short because people are usually busy, they're in a rush, they're doing their shopping, you haven't made an appointment with them, so you can't ask them lots of questions. Whereas in a home, you've made an appointment, you've got their time, right? They're not in a rush. Okay, marketers are using more technology in more intercept interviews these days, using computer-assisted personal interviewing. This is where the researcher reads questions to the respondents from a computer screen or a tablet like that guy's got, and then inserts their answers. So they give an answer, and then the researcher will just, tick, 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 pop in their answers very quickly. Another one is using computer-assisted self-interviewing. This is where the person who needs to answer the questions goes into a little room or is given the tablet, and then they themselves put in their answers. Okay, researchers will often show people things like new products and new adverts and have them taste various foods and then ask them a question about it in shops. The quality of information that you get from a mall intercept interview is very similar to that of a telephone interview. But the best quality is from a personal home interview. And see the table in your textbook regarding research. Then we have telephone interviews. Telephone interviews cost much less than personal interviews. It can also provide a good sample because a database can be used to contact exactly the type of people that you need. So if you want to contact young mothers, all you need is a database of young mothers, and then you can call them. Right? And so it's actually better than more intercept interviews in a way, because you can get a representative sample and it's cheaper. You don't need anyone to travel anywhere. You just get them to pick up the phone. And usually a centrally located facility is used with a room with many phones, like in that example, but they've got phones, that are around their heads so they can work. And the answers that people give is usually entered into a computer, like in the front of that lady. Okay, then we have electronic interviews. The growing access of South African consumers to computers and the internet is opening up an arena for electronic interviews. An email is usually sent to people with a link, and when they click on the link, the questionnaire opens up, and then they can complete it online. Now, the major advantage of this type of interviewing is the rapid response rate. You can get people to almost fill it in immediately. You can get it very fast because people are doing it on their own. And even people are using cell phones. You can send questionnaires via people's Android phones or iPhones, and they can fill it out, and the responses are immediate. But there are problems with this form of interview. Not everyone has access to the internet. It's also a lot more younger people that have access to the internet, so older people don't usually fill out things online, so the kind of population is skewed towards younger people. There's also a large number of invalid or unused email addresses. How many email addresses do you have that you opened up at one point but you don't use it anymore, but it's still somewhere there in the cloud? It's easy to ignore an email questionnaire or even delete it. Okay, then we get mail surveys. Now this is different to electronic. This is not email surveys. This is mail as in post. So electronic surveys are those that come via email, right, electronically or to your phone. But a mail survey comes to your post box. And these have many benefits. They are low cost. It doesn't cost very much to send post. You don't need interviewers and field supervisors. You can also control it in a centralized way, like the telephone interviews. And you're kept anonymous. People don't have to give their names, which is sometimes helpful. And you can actually reply more thoughtfully because you can because you're sitting in your home with all your stuff there. You can look at your records and give very accurate data because you can take your time with it. There are some negatives, however. It's very low response rate. Not everyone responds to mail surveys. Also, it's also skewed to the older population because they're more comfortable with mail. So, whereas young people don't really care for mail. It's not really possible to probe respondents. You can't ask them questions. Why do you think that? Explain more. You only get the information that they choose to give you. Okay, then you get mail panels that are operated by certain research companies like Synovate. And what they do is they have a group of people they keep on their books. They pay them usually, and these people regularly participate in mail surveys. So these people will they paid, and then they will kind of fill in mail surveys for different companies, right? So it's kind of guaranteed that you'll get an answer from them. They receive a gift or money in return for their participation, and they have a very high response rate, up to 70%. So it's sometimes good to use a company like Synovate who can send your mail to some of their database where you know you'll get a good response rate. Then we have focus groups. This is a type of personal interviewing, but people are recruited to the interview by telephone, and it's usually between 7 to 10 people who all have similar characteristics, or all have the characteristics that you need. So if they all are Peter Stuyvesant smokers, then they need to be Peter Stuyvesant smokers if Peter Stuyvesant wants to ask them questions. Right? So they have similar characteristics, or they're all young females with children or whatever. And they're usually offered an incentive like money to participate. And the meeting place can sometimes almost look like a living room or a conference room. Like that one looks more like a conference room. That one over there looks more like a living room. But interestingly, you can see in that picture there's one-way mirror, right? There's people on this side over here at the bottom that are looking at the focus group session, and they're listening in through the one-way glass. It's usually the marketing managing team that wants to listen to what people are saying in the focus group so they can get ideas. And usually it's led by a moderator or a facilitator that's trained. It's usually the person drawing. Okay, it's more than a question and answer session, focus group. There's a lot of interaction between, the group, and that's very important for a focus group because it creates this group dynamic, right, which you don't get with a personal interview. It's like people are, giving different ideas, and sometimes they're even, brainstorming and disagreeing with each other, and that produces very rich data. They can even bounce ideas and get creative and get inspired. They can inspire one another in this group context, which you wouldn't really get in a one-on-one interview. And as I said, it yields more valuable insights. So often focus groups are used to brainstorm new ideas, like with kids.